The Italian Mafia. Have you ever wondered how the Italian Mafia was born? When people say Italian Mafia, they are usually picturing one thing. But Italy actually has four major mafia systems. And they didn't grow and born the same way. They grew out of different places, different economies, and different rules of power. When we talk about Italian mafia, we are not talking about one single organization with one boss and one map. We are talking about four historically different criminal organizations, distinct criminal systems. They learned how to govern territory where the state was weak, and each one was built around different social environment. The common starting point is not culture, is function. They provide enforcement, protection, and mediation outside the law. Then they monetize that power through extortion, control of markets, and political and economical infiltration. Over time, what begins as local control becomes a long-lasting parallel authority, a way to decide who works, who pays, who wins contracts, who gets punished, and who gets left alone. The four different organizations are Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian one, Camorra, the Campania one, the Sacra Corona Unita, the Puglia one, and the Ndrangheta, that is the Calabria one. Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian Mafia, is the classic model that people imagine because it developed early and became globally visible. Its roots are strongly tied to the 19th century Sicily that had a rural economy, large estates, private guard, and intermediaries who controlled lands and all the labor while the state struggled to impose its own rules and laws and order. In that setting, the protection started as a private substitute for law enforcement and quickly turns into a monopoly of violence, the ability to settle disputes, enforce debts, and intimidate competitors. And over the 20th century, Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian Mafia, professionalized that territorial control into the political influence and then into the international business, especially during the boom of drug trafficking, with a reputation for internal rules, initiation rituals, and an attempt at coordination across groups. It's the mafia most associated with the idea of a commission or a cupola. Not because it's perfectly centralized, but because historically aimed for higher level of coordination and governance across the territories. The Camorra, which is based in Campania and especially around Naples, it is different in its DNA because it grows out of a dense urban environment rather than a rural landlord system. And that changes everything. In a city, the power sits in its neighborhoods, markets, ports, street level economy, and local networks. So the Camorra tend to be more fragmented and entrepreneurial. Instead of one strong pyramid, you often see multiple clans that forms alliances. Break them, fight, regroup, and adapt fast. It can behave like a constantly shifting marketplace. A marketplace of criminal groups competing for power and control. Control of specific areas and revenue streams, such as retail, extortion, counterfeit goods, prostitution, logistics, and local contracting. This fragmentation can make it hard to decapitate, because removing one leader does not remove the structure. The structure is the environment, and another group immediately fills the space, usually with a lot of casualties. The 'Ndrangheta from Calabria became the most underestimated and arguably the most structurally powerful in the long run, mainly because of one brutal advantage: family. Its core units are deeply, deeply tied to blood relationships and marriage alliances, which it makes harder to infiltrate and often harder to fracture. It's south of Italy. Family is everything. Where other criminals organizations may suffer from defections and internal politics, a family-based structure can be more cohesive, more loyal, and less porous. That stability helped the 'Ndrangheta to build long-term strategies, expand quietly across Italy and abroad, and dominate high-profit international businesses, international trafficking networks, especially while investing heavily in legitimate businesses to launder money. If Cosa Nostra is the mafia of governance and visibility, the 'Ndrangheta is the mafia of low noise, high finance, and durable networks. The Sacra Corona Unita, based in Puglia, is the youngest of the four, emerging much later, especially from the late 20th century. Its rise is tied to geography and timing. Puglia region faces the Adriatic and sits close to Balkan routes, which became strategically important for smuggling networks, including cigarettes, weapons in certain periods, and human trafficking. It also developed in a landscape where other mafia were expanding and local groups sought their own structure and identity. Compared with the other three, it has historically been less uniformly powerful and more exposed to fragmentation. But it still fits the mafia model: territorial intimidation, control of illicit markets, and infiltration into local economies. So the difference between the four is not just the name or the region, it's the original ecosystem. Cosa Nostra grows from rural control and turns into a system of political and economical governance. The Camorra grows in a crowded city and behaves more like competing corporate franchises. The 'Ndrangheta grows through family networks and becomes extraordinarily stable globally. And the Sacra Corona Unita grows later, shaped by strategic geography and cross-border routes. Same logic, different architecture, and that's why fighting them requires different strategy from the Italian government. Because you're not fighting one monster. You're fighting four different machines that learned how to profit from power where the law felt optional and the state, the government, was absent.